Hello, dear colleagues. Thanks for clicking. And today we are going to talk about lesson frameworks. These are kind of schemes of lesson which make your planning way easier. So, first things first, each lesson unfolds with a warm-up. And I'd like to begin with a few ideas for the warm-up, which could appeal to every lesson. To start with, you can just give your students a chance to chat for a limited time. The higher the level, the longer the lesson, the longer the time allocated might be. If you want to make it easier, you may narrow the topic. For instance, you might give the communicative task such as talk to your partner and find out whose day yesterday was more exciting. Yeah. Or to talk to your partner and find out who was busier last Friday, etc. Yeah. Or you can just let their imagination run wild and talk about whatever they want. Next activity I adore is Hangman. So you write the keyword of your lesson, the topic of your lesson, with dashes, give an explanation, and set the students in 2 or 3 groups to play Hangman, to guess that word. Yeah? Another great thing is find 3 quotations containing this keyword, take this keyword away, let your students read the quotation and guess one word which would appeal to all these 3 sentences, to all these 3 quotations. As a follow-up to these 2 activities, you may ask them to share their associations with this term, with this keyword. Yeah? Then you may just start off with asking short and easy everyday questions. For 4th or 5th grade, it might be the teacher who asks the questions. For higher levels, they might ask each other. This activity also might be used as a reliever in the middle of the lesson. When you put 2 students in 2 lines, ask questions for the first student in each line to answer. The student who answers first sits down, and the team which is to be completely seated first is the winner. And of course, it's also a great idea to do something connected with a previous lesson. For instance, if it was a vocabulary lesson, you might give the definition of the words and ask the students to guess the word, competing either in teams or individually, or something like that. Yeah? So, and now to the frameworks. The first and the most famous one probably is PPP. I hope you all know that the abbreviation stands for Presentation, Practice, Production. So the thing is that first you present or elicit material, then you drill it, moving on to controlled and freer practice, and rounding it up with production. So, for example, vocabulary lesson at the elementary level, be it, for instance, clothes vocabulary. Yeah? You show the pictures and ask students to name the items on the pictures or name these items themselves. Then, as a drill, you make students repeat pronunciation after you in choir or in groups or individually. Then, as a controlled practice, you might ask them to complete the gap fill exercise, or quickly, quickly, or slowly, slowly. Then, as a freer practice, for instance, you might ask them to make 3 sentences using these words. It's better to make these sentences communicatively meaningful. For instance, 3 sentences, 1 false, 2 true. Tell them to your partner, and the partner has to guess which one is false. And finally, you move on to production, which might be, for example, making a list of clothes for your friend to put on in certain weather. Or be it vocabulary lesson, say present continuous, for instance. Yeah. So you mime some actions, saying the sentences, and help the students understand that these refer to something happening right now. Then you make them repeat these sentences after you. Then they make their own sentences, or if you want to make it more fun, it may be the game when one student mimes the action and the others have to guess. Yeah. And finally, again, these might be, for example, asking them to look around and make up 5 sentences about what people in the class are doing or what members of their family are doing. So this is what PPP looks like. The obvious advantage of this framework is that it's really logical and clear. That's why it's easy to follow the both teachers and students. This is the reason why it's mostly used by novice teachers. Moreover, it ensures language tools before production, thus making production easier. However, it's not without its drawbacks. To begin with, this framework not necessarily clarifies the need for certain language item, which may lower motivation. In addition, it's quite difficult to differentiate students in this context and within this framework. Yeah. So, and for some extremely creative teachers and students, especially teens, it might seem a bit boring. So another one is called TTT, which stands for Test, Teach, Test, because it starts with a task to test the knowledge on a certain topic. Then you clarify the gaps that have been revealed by that test, and you finish up with the second testing. So, for example, grammar, yeah, whatever, be it present tenses in intermediate level, for instance, yeah, you suggest a gap fill exercise. Then students self-check using the keys and tell you which tenses they have most difficulty with. You revise, you practice, and then you complete the similar test again. So, of course, the obvious advantage is that it focuses on learners' needs. This way, you don't waste time on the aspects the learners already know. And it also makes the progress really obvious by comparing the results of 2 tests. Nevertheless, it's not a good idea for novice teachers to use it because it's requires extremely great skills of adjusting your plan on the part of the teacher. One more problem is that it only appeals to pre-intermediate and higher levels, because at elementary level, for instance, there's still nothing to teach at the starting point, right? One more famous framework is called TBL, which means task-based learning. So it unfolds with a project task requiring the new language. For example, if you're gonna teach present perfect, the task might be make a list of achievements to nominate a person on blah, 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 blah. If you're gonna teach future tenses, then the task might be speculate about your life in 10 years' time. Yeah. When the language to teach is suggesting and reacting functional language, then the task might be to make any common decision. Yeah? So after they have completed the project, after they have reached the aim, there's a feedback on the task, which is aimed at draw their attention to language. Then you study the language tools, which they presumably have suffered without, and only after that do you practice them. Yeah? So, for example, make a list of achievements. Yeah? Students work together in groups of 2 or 3 and make a list of achievements to nominate their classmate on a Best Student of the Year award, or to nominate the teacher they choose on a Teacher of the Year award. Yeah. Then there's the discussion, the feedback on who they have nominated and why. Then you draw their attention to the phrases they've used, analyze the grammar, and show them how much easier it could be with present perfect. Then you present the MPF of the present perfect and start controlled and freer practice, moving on to production. So, of course, the obvious advantage is that it's extremely interesting. It does show the real need for the language. Students have struggled without certain linguistic tools before they are taught them. And of course, it allows them to use a wider range of language tools. But it's immensely time consuming, and it's really, really challenging for the teacher, both in terms of language, because you have to be ready to answer any questions that might arise, and in terms of classroom management, because it's almost the whole lesson of group work. Then, another framework invented by a famous British methodologist, Jeremy Harmer, is called Engage, Study, Activate. So the first stage, engagement or motivation, yeah, where you show the students why they need certain language. Then you actually present or elicit it, and then you practice it in controlled exercises, semi-controlled, freer practice, and then in your own free speech. This template might be modified. For example, there's a version of Engage, Activate, Study, Activate, which is really similar to what we've just discussed as TTT. The obvious advantage of this is that it's really flexible, fairly logical, and it ensures students possess the linguistic tools before they start practicing. But it might be boring for some teachers and students, and it may seem fairly difficult to differentiate within this template. And to round that up, whatever template you've used, you are to finish your lesson with a feedback. There are two main types of feedback. It's content and language feedback. So content feedback is when you focus on the meaning of the task. Yeah. For instance, this example I've given while speaking of TTT and nominating. So content feedback would be, who does your peer nominate and why? And language feedback is when the teacher collects phrases while monitoring the students talking during completing the task. And then the teacher brings these phrases to the student's attention and discusses them. It's a good idea to bring both good language and mistakes so that the students feel the need to be focused. So that's about it. If you've got any questions, feel free to write them on the comments. And until next time, take care.